welcome back to another episode.
Tales from the Temple. Thanks for tuning in, everybody.
Yeah,
Remember to hit that subscribe button. Coming at you with the hard sell already. We're going to have giveaways coming up in 2025.
Yep.
Some cool stuff. Govy tubes, D-Rec pendants, probably some mood mats of a variety of kinds. I know Roozie's got quite the selection there. Probably would be down to part with a
Boom said he'll make a
boom piece.
Yeah.
And then, as time goes on, I think it would be cool if we just get a little crazy, and Boom and I and whoever collab, and we make some of these things heady.
For sure.
All right, so having said that, we've had some fun conversations with some people and allowed Roozie to sort of lead the conversation, but I think it's time we find out a little bit more about Roozie.
Oh, shit.
Damn. So having said that, to both Roozie and I, it seems to be a question mark when we first met. The first time I remember meeting Roozie, but we probably had already met. I want to say probably was at a Champs trade show when we were probably at the Circle Bar, or that would be AGE. But I want to say probably in a situation like that where we were both.
But those shows overlapped, remember? Even so,
right back in the day, they did.
The party was like the Circle Bar.
So the probably truth, yeah. So realistically, we met in that situation first. But then the first time I remember was when, at this point, you were part of
Boom's team, right?
Boom's team, and
at Temkin's Color.
At Temkin's Color Pool, exactly. Yep. So we both remember that one. But having said that, I think that was back in like 2012. So yeah, nice 12 years. It's been good. You've turned into one of my best friends. I appreciate you there.
Same.
And so before we turn this into a love fest, let's just get down to the details. And tell me first about your first exposure, introduction to cannabis, and in particular glass pieces in cannabis. Yeah, let's start there.
Perfect. So I went to high school in Hawaii, actually, and so the cannabis culture there is like pretty kind of open. I graduated in 2001, but I started smoking weed in 98. And it's funny that like during the whole, at first it's like the can.
That's actually the first time I got high was with a beer can.
So
I smoked once at a Metallica concert, but that was like I hit the pipe because it came my way, but really didn't know what I was doing. And then later it was
we need to start asking more people what they smoked out of their first couple times too.
My first time was like, first time was like a generic metal, like brass put together pipe that a stranger passed to us at a concert that I don't even know if I inhaled correctly. But then the first proper session where me and some close friends were in the woods and we're sitting there until we don't feel normal anymore. Yeah, it was a can. Bent in the middle with some with some holes popped in it.
For those of you who haven't seen the can pipe technique, don't do it.
Is that a 1900s thing? Is that? I don't know if that happens in the 2000s anymore.
That would be some good fucking research.
At the very least, aluminum can lead to Alzheimer's.
It's funny. I just saw, because what's been going around is someone made like a little like thing on Instagram of like they found like a bunch of old plastic bottle converted bongs and made like a little video of all the different versions of them, and stuff like that. And then I saw through that someone like, or somewhere just posted like, oh, the first thing, my first pipe, and it was the can. And a couple comments were like, I still use that. And everyone's like, don't. And they're like, don't tell me what to do. The internet is a wild place. Yeah. But like, everyone's like, dude, there's glass. There's like $5 glass or even fucking metal and wood pipes.
But as bad as it is to smoke out of aluminum, I believe there were a lot of aluminum pipes out there also. Those like purple metal ones and green metal ones and whatever. But so who knows?
That was my first time actually. Look. Yeah, it's funny because I always thought weed, I didn't even know like weed was smoked, I thought like it was like a hard drug, and maybe it was like snorted or whatever. And then start hanging out with my homies in high school. Actually, rest in peace. My buddy Ian and Matt were the first dudes that like I was around. And I just thought it smelt so good. I was never attracted to cigarettes because cigarettes always smelt so bad and stinky. And actually, when I was younger, I used to get migraines, and like around things like that, I'd get migraines. And then the first time I was like around my buddies smoking weed, I was just like, holy shit. And in Hawaii, they only had chronic, like dank weed. And I didn't learn what chronic even was until I came back to California, because I was born and raised in Cali, but my dad is a flight engineer. He got a job with Japan Airlines, got based in Honolulu, so we moved out there in 8th grade. But we'd come back every summer to visit grandma, and at the same time, my friends in Cali started smoking weed too. So I came back, and like we went and picked up like, you know, a 10 sack, and it was like a quarter of weed, and I was like, man, like we get like this much like in Hawaii, you know, and they're like, damn, everything's there is like so expensive, you know. And then we're like, all right, separate the stems and the seeds, and I'm like, huh? What stems and seeds? And they're like, oh, you guys get chronic in Hawaii? And I just thought chronic was a slang for weed from listening to Snoop and stuff. But Snoop was always apparently smoking dank weed, I guess. No stems, no seeds, you know.
Heady,
real sticky,
chronic,
icky.
Dank.
Yeah.
It actually was a category.
And so then I smoked it, actually got a headache from the stress, that, you know, some stress weed is what they called it. And then I was like, yo, I can't smoke this. And then we went and picked up some chronic, and it was like,
what do you think that was? What year? Do you think that was
Mexican,
or do you think it was some
it was definitely Mexican. Swag. Yep.
Yeah.
Like where we went to pick
98. Yeah, that was probably a little early for
sketchy.
Beasters.
We went.
No, actually, Beasters were hitting the scene.
We were in it's Atwater, Los Angeles, and so I grew up there, and we would walk about like a mile. And my homie was like, you wait on the corner. And I could see the fucking, like, the trap house, the, like, drug house. And they sold, like, probably meth and coke. Couple dudes on the corner watching. And he went by the General. So you'd go up and you'd be like, I'm here to see El General. You know, it was, like, definitely Mexican swag weed. And, like, you know, my buddy would go for like $20, you know. Like
that is amazing.
$10, can I get a 10 sack? Like, you would say how many 10 sacks you wanted. Yep. So it was like uno, dos, tres, you know. And so he would get that and fucking. So then the next time we went and picked up chronic, and it was like, oh, yeah, this is the only weed we get in Hawaii. You couldn't find any swag. So it smelled so good, and that it took me about a week of like hanging out with them until I started being like, okay, like I was in the room hotboxing, and then my homie Ian actually gave me like a hit through his hand, like blue, like, you know, and I got fucking super
I believe
stoned.
That's called shotgun.
Yes, you know, but not mouth to mouth. But I remember getting like slightly stoned in a hotbox, and then I did that, and I got stoned, and then the next time we smoked was actually my buddy Isaac had his older brother was a big stoner. And so he had the like acrylic bong, and so he snuck that out.
Graphics?
No, just like a plastic, no name, fucking like the green typical
was
movie
graphics
bong
big on the West Coast? You know, for me, that I was on the East Coast then, and graphics was ubiquitous with weed. But I don't know if it was
brand
original.
I heard was Jerome Baker. That was the first thing I had heard, and it was like
right. And you know that also may be timing, because when I talk graphics, I'm talking early '90s and. You're talking early 2000s.
Eventually, I did find graphics, you know, like bongs in stores. I just didn't notice, like, or realize what I was, you know, looking at. And it's funny is because even then, when we would sneak into a head shop, depending on who would work there, because we weren't 18, and they were pretty strict about it. It was I didn't even think that someone was making the pipes, and I actually remember chipping in to buy our first glass pipe. And that was like our sophomore year. And again, I didn't even get to see the pipe intact because my buddy Matt and Ian went and picked up the pipe. And then when they got back to the house, it wasn't hitting good because the hole in the bowl was so small. And again, rest in peace, my friend Ian thought he could take a nail and a coaster and just chip a little piece of glass out the bowl and make the bowl hole a little bigger. And even though my buddy Matt told him that's not going to work, he decided to try, and then the bowl just split in half.
Nice.
So by the time I got there, the thing was just like in two parts, and like, you know, my
that's
$5 of the yeah, exactly. And again, I was like, didn't really like register that a dude had made that pipe somewhere on the island in Hawaii. And then 2001, graduate, come back to Cali, start going to community college and like, start no smartphone yet and shit, of course, but like through, I guess, the internet or just even maybe the yellow pages, I found like some head shops, and word of mouth and stuff, and then started just going to bong stores. And what's funny is I would go to my own store at this point in 2001 because it was a head shop called Toys in the Attic.
Toys in the Attic.
And so I would go there and look at glass and stuff.
I sold them glass all the way back then.
That's insane.
Not like on a regular basis, but I sold them I sold them a few pieces once.
Some D-Rec, some like slinger stuff. I'm sure like they definitely had.
It was when everything I made. I want to say it was even before Tribal Patterns, so it's like all inside out pipes.
The other store was Inner Limits, which is still there. That
San Clemente
ends up being my first sale ever, which is super cool to come back to that. But so yeah, 01 I just start smoking weed and buying pipes and stuff, and still not like fully comprehending that someone's making it. And then my band got like I started like a little band with some homies. We got a lockout spot in this industrial area. And a friend met a glassblower while he was at like 7-Eleven and literally came back with like a business card that said like, blah, 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 glassblower. And we're like, okay. And like kind of kept it on our table and end up breaking my buddy's bong. And we're like, whoa, like look at the address. And it's like the building over. So we're like, let's go check this out. Maybe they can fix our bong, not knowing shit,
Yeah.
And
that's a reasonable, and I mean, and there's always probably the answer is yes. It's more like, do they want to do it?
Yeah, exactly. Well, so we went over there, and then there was two dudes, and one was like more of like a scientific guy, Michael, and then they had the government, the bell shaped design, pretty much, which was just like a dome perk in the bell, and the bong I broke from my buddy was just like a fume bubble with just like a straight tube and like this ugly fish on the side. And homie, was like, oh, can you like, they're like, oh, we could like make you something you want. We're like, can you make one with like an octopus and like a fish and a snail, like this whole like, we don't, again, but they did it actually. And they fucking nailed it, and like we came back over like 2 weeks later, like we got the bong done. I was like, holy shit, and then I ended up buying like a clear one. And at the time I was selling weed out of my band spot too, and so I'd have homies come over and kick it. It was very Pineapple Expressy,
nice.
Like come and like chill at the lockout, see the band play, grab some weed,
cool.
Yeah. And then eventually people were like, dude, that's a sick bong. And so I was like, oh yeah, like I could sell it to you if you want. Then like, so I'd sell that bong, and then went back over to the guys, was like, yo, I sold that bong, let me grab like a couple more, and started selling bongs like that. And then eventually I was like, from just going like, I remember ditching class like at community college with like the stoner friends I'd made, and then be like, yo, like we're going to Venice today, and just going head shop to head shop to head shop, or like we're going to fucking San Diego. And
was that to sell pieces or to check them out?
Just to go hang out and check it. And like one dude who was like kind of the homie like weed dealer who like would have some extra cash would like most likely buy a $300-400 bong,
right?
And then we just hop in the car and fucking like pack it, and it was like so fucking exciting. And like I remember we would just go head shop like seeking, like, and just go. And
do you remember some of them like
in Venice?
Who was down there?
God.
There was that one in Venice. Oh man, what was it called? He had something pretty cool. Chronic Creation, was it?
Damn, that sounds.
One World, and then I know Galaxy Gallery, but that wasn't in Venice.
That was on Melrose.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I want to say around that 2001 period, a bunch of us came down from the Pacific Northwest to do a 420 party there, and that's when Sex Mob was there.
Dude, and yeah, Boom knows those dudes too.
I think it could have been a few years later than that, but
that was a goal. That was a shop I was dying to get into, was Galaxy Gallery, and then they never bought any governments from me. But so I tried to, so I hit the dudes up, and we're like, yo, like I go head shop to head shop, like when are you guys gonna sell this? And they just come up with the name Government and the logo, and it was like a dope name, dope logo, dope product, and I remember just going to, I had a friend whose uncle was Jay, who owned Jay's Paradise, and there's multiple Jay's Paradises, and he owns Zob and Roar now and all that stuff. And so he was like, she's like, that's my uncle, like you can go sell him glass. And I didn't know anything about glass. All I knew about the tube was that it was 50 by 5. It was 50 millimeters wide, and it was 5 millimeters thick. It was 50 millimeters wide, it's 5 millimeters thick.
That's a beast.
So that's all I like memorized and went in and told the dude and gave him the price, and he ripped me like a new asshole. He was like, "What?" He's like, "I pay like 1/3 of the price for these Zobs and blah blah blah, and this is so expensive. You're never gonna make it. This is crazy, blah blah blah." And I like went back like almost crying, like, "Dude, they said we're too expensive and blah blah blah." And they were like, "Oh," I was like, he said he pays
Jay's
like
definition of a hard bargain,
$40 for these one bongs. They're like, "Dude, those are all import, man. Like, we fucking, this is all not China. It's
made in
the
America.
Tubing is shot, so we're not buying China
German
glass, and then where it's being made, literally, we're making the perks. No one's buying the perks and assembling it or anything like that." And so I was like, "Oh, you know what?" I was like, Inner Limits was like just a good vibe. I would never go to Jay's to shop anyway because he was so very
cutthroat.
and just kind of like a scummy vibe. And so I went to when I would go to like shops like Inner Limits, they treated me well. Like you could tell the people behind the counter smoked weed and liked what they were doing and liked the pipes and bought it themselves. And so I went there and made an appointment.
TJ, was he?
It wasn't it was this dude Brandon. I met with the buyer.
Yeah.
TJ still owned it,
right?
But they got the okay, I'm sure, from him. And
shout out TJ, by the way. He
fucking taken care of me for a long time. Owns
Hagar,
Fat Boy with Dale. Owns One Stop is another shop that he owns, and Inner Limits. And so I went down to Inner Limits. I was 19, I believe, at the time. So like 2002-ish or 3, or sorry, it was like 2004. I was about 20 years old. And then they bought like $4,000 worth of like bongs from me, and I got like a fat commission off of that. And I remember going back and sitting in my car and like just pounding the roof of my car and just being like, "I'm gonna fucking sell bongs. Like, this is what I'm gonna do for the rest of my life." Like I was like, this is it. I could sell shit that I like a lot, really well, because I get passionate about it. And it was funny because as I even started working for government, like every year, or every month, whatever, my dad was like, "The bank's hiring," and I was like, "That's awesome, but I'm going to sell bongs," but never thought I'd open
So were
the shop.
You pretty upfront with your parents early on? Because that's even I will admit, like the first, not like year, I don't know how long. It's like, we're blowing glass, but we're not really specific that it's predominantly cannabis paraphernalia.
I got kicked out of high school twice.
Right. The cat was out of the bag.
but no. And so I did have to clean up. And so I definitely hid it for a while, and then eventually it was just it's kind of like you're always like, "Oh, I met these glass blowers, they make art."
It's easy for me to say now, being
Mostly
50 years
vases.
old, that like passion really does pay off. And so what may seem like that's not a conventional path to go on, if you're really into it, then after some time you might find yourself that a lot of people found themselves that path was appealing, and you're the one that like trailblazed it. You never know.
Well, like coming from, you kind of come from that same background of like living like paycheck to paycheck, or even as a kid, not even like needing it, but like when you worked, you just noticed, you can only get so much. You can only put so many hours in, and you can max out that paycheck.
That was even a harsh lesson I
max.
learned mid-career, because, when I said the Glassworks Park studio got raided by the DEA, and I got a job with a graphics company on salary, and for a bit there wasn't blowing glass, made a couple pipes in a couple years. There was definitely times when it'd be like, "Oh shit, I spent all my money and payday isn't until a week later."
And I mean,
you're like, what? Yeah.
And my first job was Burger King, so it's like even when I did it, like the summertime, or when I got kicked out of school for weed and put 40 hours in a week, it was the same amount, paycheck. So then when you like first made X amount of pipes and took it to like a fish lot and sold, and we got like paid on all of that, like,
and it
you're
was like 5 times the amont of a normal paycheck.
Totally. So that's like when I sold the $4,000, I got like 30%, which was like $1,200, and like at 20, I was just like, it was like instant, and I was like, oh shit, I could go do this again tomorrow if I find the right shop and have the right hustle. and make another fucking $1,000 and as long as there was product there.
And what year was that again? A 2001?
04, yeah.
Because at that point, what do we got? You got a little bit of internet going on because that had just dropped. Whoops.
So that was.
I was about to say, you could start sending them to other states.
The dude, one of the owners actually of Government, his last name was Long. So we used to have the checks made out to Long Hot Glass, and a product that we made was Government glass. In case we ever got raided, they couldn't just come and
get all of
it's like, no, we're a scientific company.
Yeah.
We also make beakers or something and
hopefully
test tubes and stuff.
That
was at the time, and that was the same conversation I kind of had with you guys with your aliases, like Slinger and D-Rec and Gasp and like all the names that had to like kind of cover the whole thing. So
yes.
But yeah, so I started with that, and then all I did was sell glass to local shops, and then as I'd gone to Ventura and San Diego, was like as far as I'd gone. And then finally we met some glass blowers that were like, have you been to Champs? And I was like, I don't know what that is. And so we went and checked out Champs in 2005, and we're like, oh, what the fuck? And we're so
it's a mind fuck when
mad that we didn't have a booth. And then we signed up for the next one.
Yeah.
And that's where I was just like exposed.
If you've never
to a whole different world. Again, I was
to a trade show, it can be very eye-opening. If you're a glass blower with a small hustle in a garage or something, and you show up and
we were like just a bong company.
Yeah.
And we had met like a couple people like Selby and like Terry Fatass like early on. And Daniel was pretty obsessed with like Hoobs' work very early on. And that's actually like what made me get like a Facebook, was like to go check out Hoobry's work.
Champs was the first exposure, the first time I ever saw Hoobs. I believe it was a few years later than that though. But
and then Glass Pipes, but still seeing a lot of just really bright wig-wagged work and the big bubblers. But then once I went to Champs, I got to see like Jag's work and Snick's work and Ouch Kick's work and Salt's work and your work. And I remember seeing you and Sling's like work and like being like, how are they putting the image on there? And my boss Michael, who owned the company when I was 20, like Michael was in his 40s, and he was like, it's a sandblasting. He was a very smart, good great glass blower, but it's a sandblasting technique. I was like, I still don't understand, like, you know what I mean? But just like, I was like, oh, they're Bacons, and they weren't Bacons, and so, and then I just remember walking
stencil art,
booth to booth to booth, and just being like, kaboosh. And then they started having the flame offs and stuff. And I think my first year was the first year Buck was there and competed.
Those are the first Champs that I remember.
And it was insane. And I just thought everyone knew Buck, but everyone was learning still.
I had
like who
never
Buck,
heard of Buck, and then he won.
Wild.
And that's when I found out that he'd actually just that year also won the DFO.
The DFO.
So he was definitely coming in hot, making waves. And yeah, he's, what do you say, a phenom? He's a special artist. He's very committed. He's also,
in my opinion,
smart,
just kind of the
strong,
best of the best.
Good head on his shoulders.
Yeah,
good guy,
good dude. So,
that was cool. And we talk about Buck. He won this particular year. Champs had individual masters. He won that, and then they had a team that whoever won the masters got to assemble teams. His team, which was Darby and Karsten, ended up winning that one too. And to this day, those pieces are awesome. The giant snake and the classic fish piranha that he makes. So that would be then. Yeah, that was great for me too. Actually, those Champs were coming from the Pacific Northwest and having it all be more of a soul-searching counterculture kind of experience. That was the first time I really saw people treating it like an industry and a career, and just like, Southern California very much opened that world up to me. Like, oh, here's a bong company with a bunch of employees coming with a brand and branding, and
totally,
it's not just a slight extension of the lot, that was especially Champs. Those were some cool years. That's also was the what would we call it? The spice years.
It was, I guess,
a lot of
around that time. I think maybe like
I only say that because I've been watching
2007?
Dune, so I'm like he who controls the spice.
2007 to like 9
No, I want to say it
even?
was closer to because to me I want to say it was more like 2010 even.
Yeah.
I don't think I went to Champs until around 2010. But,
Yeah.
which is when I think those contests were. There's always been a little bit of a extra things sometimes propelling the industry forward, whether it's laundering legal cannabis money or a bunch of spice, making the head shops rich, and then them wanting their stores to be cooler, actually. And so they filled it up full of glass. From there, did you find yourself... I guess at that point you were bombarded with artists.
So that's where I just started making friends, just from going around.
And had you got Boro to your Doro, I guess is an idea now bubbling in your mind?
Not at all. I was just doing government. I thought I'd be with them forever. My goal was to get – people thought I owned the company because I did such a good job of repping it. And at the time, like you said, so I was seeing like bong companies like Zob and even at the time Hitman and fucking, Roar, Medi-Cali. Like, we had a booth before Illadelph did, And then, but once Illadelph came, their presentation and their booth was always really nice and pro. And, Sovereignty was also, like, right around that same time, like 05, 06 or whatnot. And then, within, like, a year, Toro, and within a year or two, seeing those companies just being, like, on demand, I wanted government to be that like household roar. And that was my first exposure was like to I remember once I moved here, actually that was the thing. That was the big deal was when I moved from Hawaii back to Cali in that era around 01, glass on glass had started becoming a thing.
Right.
And so everything I owned was rubber grommet, and it's still then I owned some rubber grommet bongs. And then my buddy was like, "No, dude, let's go down to Venice. Let's spend like $300 on a glass on glass piece." And it was an import piece. It should have probably cost like $40, no name, but it was super thick, like 9 mil, like straight shooter. And it was glass on glass. And he explained to me, like, it's like airtight. You're going to get the best bong load like that. Right. And then I ran into a buddy who had a Roar, and he was like, "Yo, I just got this thing for like $500.
An American Roar?
Yeah. And so, but then actually my homie Wybot, his brother at that time, like ordered like one of the gold ones off the German website, it was like $1,000, just a clear beaker, but 7 or 9 mil. And just like, so that my goal was to get government to be that name. And so I thought the more artists that knew us and then eventually collaborate with, and that Champs got me going from how I'd said like San Diego to Ventura was the furthest I'd gone. Alan from Smoke Signals, Colorado, like he was a good shop. Kenny Village Sensations, New York, all these shops from like around the states like started buying and placing orders, and it was like, holy shit, now we're like in different states. That's so fucking cool. And I got really good at learning which shops were in which city, to where I had almost like an account in almost any major. So I'd be like, name the city, and like you could go to this shop and find governments. And then I met Boom, and just doing all the trade shows. Boom, and I really fucking hit it off. I met him in Wisconsin, but he was like, "Yo, I play bass in Orange County," and I'd already seen his work and stuff, but I didn't know that was the dude making it. And so when we came back to Orange County, we really hit it off and started hanging and playing music, and then we started sharing booths. And the government team just never could get their shit together to produce enough glass to keep up with the orders that I was bringing in. It was only a team of like 4 of us, including me. And when I met Boom, it was him, his brother, Tony, Scrap, and his brother, Darren, and this dude, Kevin, who was his business partner, who was, his distributor, basically. And Boom was just in charge of the glass blowing side of it. And we shared a booth for almost 2 years. And that's when I was like, he was like, "Dude, you should just," I was like, "Are you hiring?" And even my parents didn't think I would leave government. And I did. And after I left government, they lasted maybe a year and just kind of went under, stopped producing. And I joined the Boom team, and they could produce enough glass to put me in a van and go all the way up to Washington. Very cool. So that's where I started I already had.
And that's 2000.
That was 2012.
Word.
So yeah, I joined Boom's team in 2012. and I had already had the Peace of Mind account, and at this time there was like 10 Peace of Mind shops, and so once I hit the van with Boom and I could go all the way up to Washington, that's where all those shops were. I started just like building such a good relationship with all the stores. All had different managers. Justin Wilson, who's the owner, and I became super tight. And I was just doing.
I met him at Champs also.
Yeah, I mean Justin's old school. He was supported. He helped
and AGE
Deppy start Mothership, like in the very beginning. Like with an investment and stuff. Justin has supported so many art. I think he said he's opened his first shop, the original Peace of Mind in Spokane, with like $4,000,
nice.
Which is like insane.
There was years
that
there
gets you like one piece.
Yeah, I lived right behind the Peace of Mind in Fremont,
right in Fremont.
Seattle,
that's right,
which was
Seattle.
I think the first Seattle location.
Yeah, there was 3 in Seattle, 1 in Tacoma. There was 4 in Spokane, 1 in Missoula, Montana, then 1 in Bend, Oregon, and at one point he had 2 in Alaska. And then I was like the 13th store to open. But so I was just selling glass to not just his shop, but I was kicking ass selling glass on the road. I'd built a good reputation for it to where, Hops, Hoobs, other people were like, yo, you should take my glass on the road. And I couldn't because I strictly had like a boss that was giving me a paycheck to sell Boom and his other side thing that Boom helped him start, which was Envy Glass. And then when that dude kicked us all out in 2014, that's where I started Boro Teodoro. I hit up Hops, I hit up Hoobs.
Perfect.
And Hoobs had just started Goosefire and it also like just moved and was like, yo, like come to the studio. I got all these boxes I haven't gone through in forever. And Hoobs pulled out some of the sickest fucking pieces. Like these sick kung fu like Jop collabs, these cars with Doc, some of his like shoe pendants that he'd like very rarely made. I hit up kind of everyone in that studio. Boom got me a box of stuff. Slob, Chow, Nerve, a few other artists, and I rented a van and did my route. But this time I did the route as myself and came back and I sold fucking everything I took.
Killer.
Came back, cashed everyone out. And that was like, all right, I'm gonna fucking do Boro Teodoro. And then I got a Sprinter van, and I did in 2015. I mean, I hit the road a few times, but the longest chunk I left for like 90 days. I went on the road consistently, where I left my house, drove up to Washington, went to Hoobs and Jop's show, sold glass along the way. From there, sold glass along the way to Denver. Did my first trade show as myself at AGE. Kelly flew in. It was my birthday. It was like 420-ish. She drove with me to New Orleans. We did Jazz Fest. I flew her home. Then I continued to Florida, up to Atlantic City, did Champs out there. Did the whole northern chunk over there, went into the Midwest, and along the way I would stay with either glassblowers or the shop owners. And so when I'd stay with glassblowers, I'd kind of re-up. And it kind of became this thing of like taking West Coast glass to the East Coast and East Coast glass to the West Coast, which wasn't getting exposed so much, I guess, but showing up with like Hoobs' work on the East Coast, people loved it.
Yeah.
And then I sold a lot of Jop's work and then some Elbows, like I was, whoever would give me work, I would take it and try to sell it. And I was doing all the trade shows. And then as my relationship got more serious with Kelly and my dog was kind of just getting older, and I'd become really close with Justin. It was like talks of opening up a California shop, and my Sprinter van was literally a fucking head shop. I had pipes, like spoons from like $5 up to, you name the fucking headies.
Yeah.
And when I would like regroup, I'd do it in my garage, and I take like a month off sometimes, and I get hit up from like homies and be like, yo, like I'm kind of looking for like a pipe. Like, well, I'd be like, come over. And then we'd go in my garage and be like, dude, you have a fucking head shop in here. I was like, I do have a head shop in here. And so I kind of started talking about Justin, about like just grounding myself more, not being on the road as much. And somehow we were talking about opening up a shop somewhere else, actually. And then we went to just go grab a beer by the beach and drove by what used to be Toys in the Attic, changed to Space Monkey. And I was like, yo, I bet you like, man, these guys would probably even want to sell, or get out of it. And we drove by and it said for lease. And that was like in January. And when he showed up to the AGE show in February, he walked up to my booth and was like, yo, when you go back home, you got to go pick up the keys because we got the spot. And he was like, and his whole thing was like, he likes to have grand openings on 420. So it was like, we're opening 420. And it was like, oh, fuck, I have like 2 months to open up a head shop. And I like freaked out.
Yeah. Got to do it. Jump feet first into the deep end. Good for Justin.
Lucky enough to get Megan on the team, and I'll do one of these with Megan, or we'll do one of these with Megan and Matt too. And their whole history of just like
Megan and Mer Labs.
That's a whole crazy. They used to just manage a shop and buy glass from me, but then started working for the Boom team. So like that's a whole cool like story and how it's just all full circle. And now we're all this big like happy family.
The Temple of Doom, peace of mind.
Yeah. And so real quick, Borrow to Your Door was like 2014 to 2016. And it was end of 14, so like really was just like one solid year of 2015. But that is when the heady scene really was blowing up.
Yes,
dabs had become a solid fucking thing.
That probably was around the same time as Denver and Colorado and Oregon legalizing recreational, which allowed a lot of money
14?
To come in. I don't remember exactly, but
that it was. I think maybe.
But that makes 15. Sense because it seemed to overlap with dab culture.
No,
taking over
you're
cannabis culture,
right.
At least on the heady end of it.
But no, because at 15, I went to Colorado to do.
Or wait, was it Colorado and Washington actually?
The cannabis,
was it Oregon or Washington?
The cannabis cup out there, the High Times Cup and shit. And it was the first time where we could just like dab it up at the booth, you know. And I was partnered with Mr. B's Extracts at the time, who was doing the Wi-Fi OG for Payasa Grow, who's now what's John's company? It's like Brothers Cannabis, I believe. Yes, the Cannabis Brothers. Thank you. And fucking that. So yeah, it's crazy to see those dudes in the legal market, and at the time like shatter was such a thing, and they just had fucking like pizza boxes of it, literally, opening. That's how they were transporting them in. And then we were just heating up titanium nails, like the domeless titanium nails that Silica was making, and fucking just dropping like, dude, bigger chunks than the dish, like a chunk of shatter like this on a dish like that big, and just like they were like literally wasting it. But we were going hot, so it wasn't
even
like
people would
tasting.
just like grab a whole sheet and just be like
into the. That's right. Yeah. So, but that was a wild experience. I remember just being like, "Holy shit!" Like we're finally smoking in public with cops around at a open like weed event. Like
for me, that would have been Seattle Hemp Fest, which was ahead of its time.
Totally, I'd always wanted to go to that.
Because it was at best decriminalized in Seattle, but the cops were like. They even said, actually, there was always like a policeman speaker at those events that would always say, in essence, that the police have to volunteer for certain extracurricular things like Hempfest or Bumbershoot or whatever, Seafair, different things. And he said Hempfest was the one that everyone volunteered for the quickest. Mm-hmm. They were like, the stoners are the most well-behaved. It's the most fun thing ever. And that's when I noticed that I could be smoking weed and cops could walk by. But they did bust minors.
Oh, yeah.
They would look at kids and be like, wait a minute, you're in high school. Yeah. Next thing you know, they're getting fucking busted.
That sucks.
Or the occasional person that was just a jackass and would think, I'm going to walk up to the cops with a huge joint and just blow the smoke in their face.
Try to make it.
Then they're like, yeah, that wasn't the right move.
Although now, like, we were at that concert and just outside before we walked in, and we were just taking rips, and the hit was just going right into these cops. The wind was just blowing it right in their face. They were just kind of turning around and just laughed,
and like it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
It's
we're lucky to be in Cali because you can't do that still everywhere as well.
No, and it's easy. It's easy to think you can.
But I started the shop in 16, and I still borrowed to your door actually for about a year or so. Actually, now that I think about it, I still did a couple runs up to Spokane and where we played the Boro Derby and stuff like that. But then And I still do the trade shows. I've done champs every single year since 2006. So come 2026 will be my shop's 10-year anniversary, and it'll be my 20-year anniversary in the game. So, but yeah, I'm
hustling from the beginning.
And the shop made sense just becoming friends with everyone naturally through just being fans of their work. And never being like, one day I'm going to start a shop and like I'm going to sell,
right?
You know, it was just kind of naturally
I
happened.
think that part of the success of your store definitely is an authentic love of the culture and connection with the buyers and the artists.
Thank you.
And I know you dabble a little bit yourself.
I try, but not that hard.
So,
yeah, I always did parts for like government, and like.
Yeah.
So, and then when I got to Boom like really fucking taught me how to, I mean, I'm not good at all, but Boom taught me like pretty much everything, he's an incredible teacher.
Yes, he is. Yeah. He's articulate and patient and, what can I say? He's comfortable to be around.
The patience, man.
He's also the bass player in our band and the producer / engineer of our album.
Yes.
Adrift
in the Ocean.
And I do. Oh yeah, Adrift in the Ocean, available on all streaming services. Adrift in the Ocean, not the song by Ya, but Adrift in the Ocean. New material coming out in 2025.
Yep.
So having said that, from there, what I would say, so my first coming into SoCal. When I moved down to SoCal from San Francisco, I want to say this was the crossover period when Easy Street Gallery was in Brooklyn and doing artist shows, and they were only around a year or two, and then the Goosefire kind of took up the mantle and had a couple-year run, and then that seemed to be a model that you chose to follow that I think has been pretty successful, that you've done in your own way, which is artist drops.
I noticed how awesome those events were. Your shows, one at the Goosefire, line around the corner.
Career high.
Going back to like when I first like met you, I had met you at Champs. You'd given me a T-shirt that I was like, fuck, I can never wear this.
Yes.
It's like a chick,
There's a couple I can think of that might fit that category. That
spreading
one.
some things.
Yeah. Did she
I
have
love
the skull
it.
face?
I love it. No. Oh no. Did she have a skull face? Yes. And so
undead.
But I definitely remember coming to your show, and then like they had a Irish pub across the street, and
such a great
T-Rec would get fucking sauced up, and then
some of my drunkest moments.
I'd come
don't
up
need
and,
to be repeated,
and
but proud of them.
Would just be like, Rooz, what's up? And like like a happy punch.
Yeah. I was known for the affectionate punch that was harder than I thought it was.
Derek likes me,
I remember one time tried to sling one, probably with a little bit of malice at Hops, and he dodged it, and I hit Shayna.
Oh, shit.
She was like, "What the fuck?"
But yeah. So the Goosefire definitely, like you said, Jags and then Easy Street and stuff, and then Goosefire. Fusion was also a shop in Santa Barbara having a lot of shows. But going to the Goosefire shows before they moved, when they were their original spot in Long Beach, it was so fun, and like there was nothing like that. Like we had public high timesy events, but those were so just general public, like anyone that even just smokes a joint comes, where this was specifically for that artist was a good and the culture of it, and like
perfect storm of I would say that time period before Prop 64, when medical was created that gray area where people could make black market money off but not take the risk off of cannabis. So there was a lot of that coming in. The Goosefire was actually funded by a dispensary that was across the street.
Yeah.
I can't remember what that was called.
Yeah, I know. It's literally next door until they opened up the gallery.
And then they opened up High Priority as a head shop.
Yes.
And then they got exposed to headies from Nate, who works for that testing company now, Bella Costa. whatever.
Yep.
Nate from Bella Costa, really smart guy, knows a lot about cannabis. We might even bring him on one day. He'll talk.
That would be cool.
Talk our ears off about the science and the tech, whatever.
But yeah, I noticed how fun those shows were. They were just they felt like concerty as well. And so being into music my whole life, I very much try to treat my shop like a venue. And that's what so pre-internet, like, and pre-social media, people like Matt Megan that lived in like Fargo or like, you know, cities that weren't as so weed friendly, even though it's, you know, LA wasn't always weed friendly, but you know, once it became
compared to Fargo.
Yeah, exactly. You know, but so like they would, or cities that didn't have a glass scene yet.
I don't even know where Fargo stands now. Did they go?
It's still not good. Don't go. And so people like Megan and Matt would come to Champs, soak everything in. If they had a digital camera, they could take pictures of some stuff, but some artists didn't want you to take pictures of some stuff after getting knocked off and shit. So they would be just like the keeper of the flame. They'd go back to their store, and then their local collectors that were hardcore about it, that were buying nice glass, would come back and be like, what did you see? Tell me all about it, you know? So that shop, in a sense, is just like a good venue. You trust them. You might not know the artist they're bringing in, but you know they're going to be good, you know?
Right.
And there's just venues like that you're just like, you know, like, it doesn't matter who's kind of going to play there, like the Fillmore or like the Independent, like in San Francisco, you know, like
whether you're the curator or the booking agent, you know, have
they're going to have
pick good stuff.
They're, you know, like the Brooklyn Bowl. So many venues that just have good, consistent bands, whatever the genre is, you know? And so once I saw the show thing, I was like, oh yeah. And, you know, we've always just been good at hosting parties and stuff and getting people together. So I was like, that's the way to do it, you know. It's and at that time, people were traveling for shows. People would collect like specifically kind of just like one artist, really hardcore. And so it was like, oh, if like Peter Muller's having a show, and that's why I put the full lineup of the year. It's like Peter in October, like Rhino in September. It's like, oh shit, I live over here, but I want to go to that Rhino show. I'm gonna plan to fly out in September. You know, go out, meet Rhino, watch him blow glass. We have a station in the front. That was like my goal. You know, is always to like expose people to to get to see it get made. And that was the thing. It's like, even getting to meet your favorite artist is rad, but getting to watch them make stuff is even doper, because that's why we're, you know, that's what we're all collecting and stuff. So having that was just always felt like the bonus. And then since 2017 in January, we've hosted at least one show a month every single fucking month.
Even so during the pandemic?
Virtually.
Virtual, word up.
So, although
I probably took part, so forgive me. Don't remember shit.
Although we weren't the first to host shows, I can guaranteed say we've hosted the most shows in head shop history. And if you can prove me wrong, do it, like, for sure, like, do it. I'm not trying to be like, prove me wrong, but like
You've carried that torch hard.
99.9% am sure, from being in it for 20 years, and I've just seen shops that some are still hosting shows, some aren't anymore, but some started later than us.
And the ones that do host shows do it, it seems a lot more seasonally. Like there's a couple shows a year, maybe whatever.
You know? So, and nothing against any of that, but it's been a model. And then now with fucking right, and I'll have Slobby on here, but I love that dude so much. Last year, Black Friday, he was just at the shop, and he was like, is there gas and propane? I was like, yeah. He's like, care if I blow glass? I was like, fucking do it. And he's like, Friday night pipes, baby. And we've started that tradition. So now we've even done at least two things a month.
And those are fun.
And those are super
fun. Cook hot
fun.
dogs.
So
the
fun.
Weenie roast.
It's just like it's kind of like like a speakeasy-ish like vibe.
Sure,
just come, hang out, smoke weed, watch someone make a pipe, and that's the vibe. Friday night
the
pipes.
store has been lucky that despite being in Newport Beach in Orange County, the police are 100% not a hassle. It's they don't care about the consumption within the the establishment, because it is a head shop. There's already an age requirement, and so
we also weaseled our way into like smoking in there. At first, like, we didn't smoke at all in my shop, believe it or not. And when I still had my Sprinter van, and we would set that up at the end of the parking lot, and I put a table in there with 6 chairs and the blinder up in the front, and I'd run the AC if someone was going to, and it'd be like 6 people at a time could go and smoke in the van if they want, and then come back. And we did that for like a year until we got an office upstairs, until that was too much to handle. And then it was just like, dude, fuck it, we're smoking in the store. And then it's just kind of been like, we're smoking in the store.
Yeah,
like,
it's been the way it should be, which is not
straight
a big
up.
deal.
Yeah, I know. From going in and not being able to be old enough to go in, and then going in and seeing big signs that say, don't say bong, don't say the B word.
Oh,
even.
yeah,
like,
hilarious. That was a big one for me,
kicked
coming
out.
from the East Coast to the West Coast.
There's
Also,
always a friend that
going
would
to San
say
Francisco. Part of the trip of Haight Street was that
they didn't care.
They didn't care on
Yeah,
Haight Street.
yeah.
So it was funny.
Was
It's like,
fucking,
oh, whoa, California, and all right. So then moving up more towards the final chapter, not of our lives, but of the story, we would then Matt and I, who we've mentioned many times, of our labs and Megan, both fans of metal and guitar players, had rented a place in downtown Santa Ana, or Lockout. We were rocking, and we needed a drummer, and Matt was the one really that chose to bring you in. And that's when I would say our friendship really started coming together. We were acquainted and we knew each other.
I have to keep telling you. You've always had your guard up, and you're always like, you know, my friends, I need some more friends.
It's
we're
true.
like, we're right here, buddy. I'm just fucking with you.
It's the oldness thing, right?
No,
it's
no.
like the other friends I know.
But
so long, but
what better
that was
bond than
before.
a band, you know?
A great way for sure.
And it was the pandemic. It was perfect timing, and that's what led us to getting this spot, because Derek was renting space at IDAB, but also paying rent at a practice spot, and we were like, why don't we get both?
Yeah.
And this spot,
Simple
that's why
number
we're so lucky.
crunching made me realize that other than the setup, which would be a chunk, the actual maintenance and rent would actually be lower than where I was at.
Yep. And then I needed the spot for guests, to come through, and it all just made sense.
In a horrible twist of fate, at least on my end, it was the pandemic, so I did get some money from that.
Yep.
That I was able then to feel more comfortable splurging on some things here, even though you outspent me probably 2-1. But we made the shop. We've mentioned places like the Goose Fire and whatnot. The Goose Fire started off as a really great gallery that then expanded into a gallery studio, but couldn't support itself. It was 10,000 square feet. So this place is a nice
size.
culmination of experience where we realized we want to be able to play music comfortably and not be necessarily jammed in a small office. So it's not a huge space that we play in, but it's comfortable. Maybe taller ceilings would be nice, but still. And then we want a comfortable glass-blowing studio and a place also like where we're doing this podcast, actually, where we can be comfortable. Yeah. And then I have an office. So this checked everything off without feeling like it was going to be hard to sustain. And that's proven to be the case. We've got a couple renters now. In the past, we had Scolari and Rice Made This, and now we have Algae and Swears, and it's a good vibe right now. It's a really comfortable, good vibe. But let's just mention a couple of the events we have. Like thanks to the connections you made, thanks to the retail outlet that you also provide, we've had pretty much who's who of the glassblowers come and work with us here, so that I would say some of the regulars and our favorites, and they're like family to us now, would be Bob and his family, Bob Snodgrass and his family, name dropping heavy, but I got to do it.
They're coming back to the Temple Takeover. I've been texting them. So we should hopefully have Bob on here come
right.
April.
He's a beautiful soul and deserves all the success he's experiencing at this point in his life. And then, of course, Salt and Peter Mueller.
I'm just joking. Salt's the fucking man. Mueller is the fucking man.
And those two
so
are
Rhino.
come. And and then we have Rhino. We've had Brand Martin. I mean,
Brandon,
now I don't want to miss anybody. Of course, it
Voorhees.
just because it goes on and on and on.
But the Temple Takeover.
Even want to mention Gonzo as our first guest to fucking,
the
most recent one being
Chaco was like the first resident. He was here like a week, you know. And I mean, dude, it's going on 4 years, you know.
Yes,
So,
it's going on 4 years.
It's like right at the halfway point of the shop. It was like its fifth year or so, and we got the studio.
So coming up in 2025, between here and Peace of Mind, we've got what are some, I guess not to get too confusing.
Up next is in March, we'll have a class here with Ease and Gasp.
Very awesome. And maybe some extra special guests to
You never
TBA.
know. You never know. I've been putting it in that dude's ear.
Yeah. I might even put it in the other dude's ear who you can probably guess who's much more of a hermit. But I think, yeah.
So, and then in May or in April again, we'll do the temple takeover again. And and I think we'll have Kurt here for his first time as a part of that.
I would
been
say
to the temple, he's to the studio before, but
pay attention to the Peace of Mind IG page, because the temple takeover is a special thing, and we do allow a very limited amount of VIPs to be part of that.
The watching here
for one night, because it's a solid week of solid days of work, but for the wrap up near the end, we allow a couple of the most beloved of the inner circle to come and experience that with us, because it's actually an endurance fest. I mean, to try and keep up with the work ethic and just the insane creative output of the typical workforce ends up being Salt, Peter Moeller, Rhino, and then special guests would probably be like Hoobs and Brandon Martin, and then of course the Snodgrass family comes in hot, and then Team Temple of Doom.
Yep.
Doing what we do.
That's the thing, yeah.
Always representing, but
and that'll be a fun one. We'll have everyone that comes to the takeover. We'll get another one in with Muller, but it'll be great to have Salt on here. That's going to be a long, funny, awesome story. And then you got the Snodgrass family, get them on here. So yeah, really looking forward to April. I've got pretty much most of next year kind of dialed in. So yeah, and that's always on the Peace of Mind page. I have like a yearly thing we'll post in January. But then again, all these episodes are on YouTube. Tales from the Temple of Doom.
And even as some of the events transpire, I know our team, meaning that's that Fuego, Evan, he'll be on the scene, and he'll be capturing a lot of footage of really rad shit. I have a feeling he might pull a couple all-nighters with us during the temple takeover if his schedule permits with his other obligations. And,
especially if the Stoddies are here. And that will be our, it's usually all the work is dropped on our anniversary show, so it'll be on our 9-year anniversary. So
which is 420.
I will get Evan most likely to film a nice little getting ready and then like a recap, because depending on when we do it, the Snoddies like to come and be present for the actual drop as well. So yeah, but all the recap videos, all that stuff you see is all my man Evan. That's that Fuego. Thank you so much for always capturing the moment, editing it, spending all that time on it, and then making this happen. Because if it wasn't for you kind of also just getting that fire under our ass, this podcast would not have happened.
Could not happen without him.
So thank you to him. Thank you to Derek.
So also just want to say one more time, subscribe to Tales from the Temple of Doom on YouTube. We promise we're going to be doing the sickest giveaways ever. You're going to be so stoked.
Once we hit 1,000 subscribers?
Yeah, whatever. We're going to it'll be kind of go with the flow. We got to make
first giveaway at 100 subscribers.
And also while we're at it, watching any of these videos, feel free to tell us, ask some questions. Maybe we can answer them. And at the same time, if you want to talk shit, I'll talk shit back, dude. Let's get that algorithm in the mix, motherfucker. Fuck you guys.
Yeah,
I'm just joking.
Talk to Derek about that. Don't DM me with shit. Talk to Derek about that.
I shouldn't have said that. I'm asking for trouble here, but
it's at the end. If they watch this far, then they deserve to.
Yeah, we love you, by the way.
Yes. All right. But
so right on.
Yeah, thanks
again. Peace out, brothers and
Love
sisters and theys and thems and everyone in between.
Why?